We're in the middle of Perek Membeis, which is a very fundamental, important Perek. We started it last week. We are 8 lines in the bottom of the page. At the bottom is 218. On the top, it's page Nun Tes. 8 lines in the bottom of the page. Okay? Dr. Rebbe, what we learned last week in order to continue, Dr. Rebbe explained last week, what we learned last week is, based on what he explained earlier about fear, the primary thing is the fear of Hashem. You can understand what the Gemara says on the pasuk. In last week, Parshas Eiker, 2 weeks ago, the Torah says, "Ba'ata Yisrael, now Jews, Ma Hashem Elokecha Shel Mimach. What does God want from you? Kiyam liyira. The only thing He wants is to fear. Big deal." So the Gemara asks, "After Yira Milsazutusi, is fear such an easy thing?" The pasuk makes it. What does He want already? He only wants you to fear God. Fear God is a tremendously difficult thing. Somebody's always watching that you'll never, your God's always with you. I mean, come on, that's a very difficult thing. So the Gemara answers for Moshe Rabbeinu, it's easy. Okay? So the Alter Rebbe asks, but it doesn't say to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking to the Jewish people and says, Ma Hashem HaKach Hashem Me'imach. What does God want from you? Not what from me. But Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking. So the Alter Rebbe starts explaining like this, that there are 7 shepherds. And what is a shepherd? One who feeds the flock. So Moshe Rabbeinu, every Jew has a Moshe Rabbeinu within them. This Moshe Rabbeinu is the level of the Amunah and the Das, the belief and the feeling, actually not knowing, feeling godliness that Moshe Rabbeinu instills within every single Jew. So therefore, there is a Moshe Rabbeinu really within every single Jew. So therefore, he's not done yet. But when the pasuk says, what does Hashem want? The only thing He wants is for you to fear Hashem. Yeah, and the Gemara answers, for Moshe Rabbeinu, it's easy. That means for the Moshe Rabbeinu within every single Jew, it's easy. But now he's explaining, but we got to reveal it. And he says like this. We just began this last week very briefly. And even more so than this, the whole in every generation, the sparks of Moshe Rabbeinu come down. And they dress themselves into the body and soul of the Chacham, the Tzaddikim, Einei Ha'eda, the eyes of the community, and I'll explain in a second. L'lamed das esa'am, to teach das, which we'll soon see. The Alter Rebbe will explain what das means. But later that they should have das know the Dulas Hashem, the greatness of Hashem, Ula'avdei b'lei v'nefesh, and to serve Him with the heart, complete heart and soul. Meaning like this. And here is there's a few fundamental things. The Rebbe has elaborates on one point over here. Our Rebbe elaborates it's brought down in the lessons in Tanya. Chachamim are called Einei Ha'eda. If you look in Chumash, many places they're called the eyes of the community. Why are Chachamim, why are Tzaddikim, why are Rebbes called Einei Ha'eda, the eyes of the community? They're called the heads of the community. He said Rabbi is Rosh B'nai Yisrael. That's what the word Rabbi stands for. Rosh B'nai Yisrael is the head of the Jewish people. But why are they called Einei Ha'eda? They're called Einei Ha'eda because what is a person's eyes is to see what's going on. The purpose of eyes is to see what's going on. They know what's going on upstairs, and therefore they know what has to be done downstairs. They have eyes. In davening, we say from Tillim Shabbos that Einayim lahem v'lo yiru. People can have eyes, but they don't see. Einayim lahem lo yishma. They can have ears, but they don't hear. We don't know what we're looking at. You need to know what you look at. Tzaddikim are called Einei Ha'eda because they have the eyes to see actually what's going on around the world and what needs to be done in the world. But here the Alter Rebbe is saying like this. There is a level of Moshe Rabbeinu in every single Jew. Okay? There is a part of Moshe Rabbeinu. Then the Alter Rebbe says a second point. There is a spark, not a ray of Moshe Rabbeinu. By every Jew, there's a ray of Moshe Rabbeinu. By Tzaddikim, the Alter Rebbe says it comes down a spark in the body and soul. Now, why does the Alter Rebbe say body first? Of a Moshe Rabbeinu, it means a Rebbe in every generation, their body and soul is a spark of Moshe Rabbeinu. And the Rebbe explains, why is the Alter Rebbe saying first body and then soul? It should be soul and body. Because if the order would be reversed, some people would think that the spark of Moshe Rabbeinu in the Rebbe is in the neshama, and from the neshama it comes into the body. The Rebbe says no. Not only is the neshama of a Rebbe in every generation the spark of Moshe Rabbeinu, but their body is the spark of Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, that means the uniqueness of Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, even the spark of Moshe Rabbeinu. And he brings down an interesting thing. This is a well-known thing that by Chassidim, they used to say that a person never gets tired of looking at a Rebbe. People never get tired of looking at a Rebbe. Why? Because, one second. I saw it brings it down here. But it's a remarkable concept because that's an infinite body and an infinite soul, because it's the body of Moshe Rabbeinu and the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu. And this Moshe Rabbeinu of the generation reveals the Moshe Rabbeinu in every single Jew. In other words, like this. You have the Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are called the three Avos, the three patriarchs. We learned already many different times. Reuven, Shimon, Levi are not called Reuven Avinu, Shimon Avinu, Levi Avinu. The Gemara says, "Ein Kaidim la'Avos Elul Shleisha." Only the three Avos are called Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are called fathers. Why? Because a child inherits from the father. Every single Jew inherits from Avraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov. Ava, Yira, Rachamim, Chesed, Gvura, Tefer. Every Jew inherits those from the others. If you came from Reuven, you inherited Reuven's traits. If you came from Shimon, Shimon's level. Levi, Levi's level. But the only one that has all three is Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And therefore, what does a father do? A father gives over inheritance. Tachas avisecha yiu vanecha. In the place of your fathers stands the child. That's why a child inherits from the father. That means the child is an extension of the father. And therefore, any trait that the father has, the child has. So Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Avraham personified love, Yitzchak severity, Yaakov mercy. Every single Jew has those traits within them. That's an Av. Moshe is Rabbeinu. Rabbeinu is also a teacher, obviously, that gives over to the disciple. So that just like every Jew has a Yerusha from Moshe Rabbeinu, the Gemara is telling us by saying from Moshe it's easy. The Gemara is actually telling us that every Jew has a Moshe Rabbeinu within them. But it's hidden. In addition to that, the Alter Rebbe says now that in every generation comes down the shamas of a Rebbe, Einei Ha'eda, that are not only the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu, but actually the body, the spark of Moshe Rabbeinu's body. And he says, what is their function? Lalame das esam, to teach das, knowledge to the people. V'leida gdulas Hashem, to understand and feel the greatness of Hashem. Ula'avdei b'lei v'nefesh, and to serve him with heart and soul. Ki avodah shebelev, because the avodah of the heart, that means to really feel it. Hilefia das is based on the level of das. Now, let me explain what this means. You can have understanding, and that doesn't mean your behavior is based on your understanding. The Rebbe told the story many times. Aristotle, who was the preacher of morals and ethics, was once caught by his students doing an immoral act. So they said to him, you, Aristotle, you're the preacher of morals and ethics. Why are you doing this? He said to them, now I'm not Aristotle. Now I'm not Aristotle. Meaning, what did he say to them? The Rambam writes about Aristotle, Chacham Gadol Hoya. The Rambam writes about Aristotle that he was a brilliant man. Aristotle basically was telling him, what I preach is what I preach, and what I practice is what I practice. It's not necessarily the same thing. You can know something, it's a Rashi in Chumash also. You can understand something is wrong, and you'll do it anyway. How many times do we find doctors who can preach to you all about health, and they themselves do not live necessarily a healthy lifestyle? How could that be? How could that be that they know health and they're not living a healthy lifestyle? The answer is their knowledge doesn't affect them internally. It's superficial. They don't feel it. They know it. They don't feel it. What is the level of das? Das is not understanding what's right and wrong. Das is actually feeling what's right and what's wrong. It's a Rashi at the beginning of Parshas Achri Meis. Rashi quotes the Medrash. It says, after Aaron's two children died, so Hashem says to Aaron, don't go into the Beis Hamikdash when you're not supposed to. Rashi says, there's an analogy of a sick person. Person was sick. And the doctor came to him and he said, don't eat this food, because if you eat this food, God forbid, you're going to die. And the guy will not necessarily listen to the doctor because he hears, but they'll eat it anyway. Then the second time, a doctor comes to a patient who had a close friend or relative that died from this illness for eating that food. And then the doctor says to him, don't eat the food, because if you do, you're going to die like your relative died. That's a different type of knowing. It's not an intellectual knowing. It's a feeling. That's what das is. Das is not knowledge. Knowledge is chokhmah and bina. Das, the Alter Rebbe explained in Perek Gimel earlier in Tanya, is going to quote it again here. The Alter Rebbe explains das means you feel it. And therefore, when the pasuk says that the Alter Rebbe is quoting now, da es Elokei avicha, you should know, again, feel God, then va'avdeu b'leiv of sholim. Then you're going to be able to serve him properly. Why? Because when you feel the difference between right and wrong, then you're not going to do it. I can know what's right and wrong, I'll still do it. But if I feel it, it's a whole different world. And that's the role of Moshe Rabbeinu. The function of Moshe Rabbeinu is, like the Rebbe writes at great length in Bata Tetzaveh, to internalize the level of feeling godliness. Whether it's emunah, and again, like we mentioned last time, you can have a ganef breaking into a house and he's going to daven to Hashem to be successful. It seems to be contradictory. He believes in God, yet he's going against the will of Hashem. Yeah, because the emunah is just superficial. He believes, of course he believes, but it's not affecting him internally. He doesn't feel the belief in God. Moshe Rabbeinu's level is to give das, this level of feeling of elokus, feeling into neshamas. In fact, Chassidus explains this. Many different rabbis and different maimorim. The pasuk says, "The zarati is Beis Yisrael." The pasuk in wherever it is in Tanakh. The zarati is Beis Yisrael. Hashem says, "I'm planting the Jewish nation, Beis Yisrael, zera Adam v'zera behema." Hashem says, "I'm planting the Jewish people, seed of man and seed of behema, of an animal." What does the pasuk mean? So Chassidus explains this refers to different types of neshamas that Jews have. Most neshamas are what's called zera behema, seed of animals. Holy tzaddikim, they're called zera adam. What does this mean? So Chassidus explains as follows. The Gemara says, Adam yeshli das, behema ein lo das. The Gemara says, Adam, a person, has das, behema ein lo das. A behema doesn't have das. Therefore, we mentioned this many times, what's the first bracha in the Shemona Esrei we say during the week, 3 times a day? Right after the initial 3, praising Hashem, the first bracha is Ata Choinen LaAdam Das. You gave das to a person, Adam. Why is that the first bracha? Because that's the uniqueness of a person over an animal. So what's the difference of neshamas that are called zera Adam and neshamas that are called zera behema? So Chassidus explains, zera Adam means neshamas are lofty neshamas. They are Adam, meaning they feel godliness. The neshama feels godliness. There are lower level neshamas, which is, by the way, the majority of neshamas, are called zera behema. What do you mean zera behema? They're a neshama, they're part of Hashem, all the greatness. But they don't have das, they don't feel godliness by itself. That's the level of neshama. What is the function of Moshe Rabbeinu? The function of Moshe Rabbeinu is to give das in those neshamas that are called zera behema. That's the function of Moshe Rabbeinu. To be mamshich das, and that's what he says. That's the function of Moshe Rabbeinu. And Moshe Rabbeinu in every generation, who is a spark, not only a revelation, the spark, the actual fire of Moshe Rabbeinu, their body and soul of a Rebbe, that is their function, to feed Jews with das. And as we learned previously, this is what we say in Shema 3 times a day. V'nasati Esav v'sadcha levehemtecha v'yachalta v'sabat. We mentioned this not long ago. Moshe Rabbeinu says, "I'm giving grass to the behemoths in the field, and you're going to eat them before." The question, Moshe Rabbeinu, the Medrash asks, Moshe Rabbeinu God gives grass, not Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Gemara answers, the Shechina speaks to Moshe Rabbeinu. But we learned, what is Moshe Rabbeinu actually saying over here? Esav, it says in Kabbalah, is Ayin Shin Beis, is Ab, which is the level of das, and Shin is a level of das. Kabbalistically, Esav Ayin Shin Beis represents das. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, what is my role? Moshe Rabbeinu. V'nasati Esav, I'm giving das. V'sadcha livehem techa, for those neshamas that are called zera behema, v'yachalta v'savata, and you should eat it and digest it and get das. This is the role of Moshe Rabbeinu. The Alter Rebbe says like this: every Jew has a Moshe Rabbeinu within them. The Gemara says for Moshe Rabbeinu it's easy, but now in every generation comes down, real Moshe Rabbeinu, the spark of Moshe Rabbeinu. And what is his role? To provide das, not knowledge, feeling of eloquence. But you can have a non-Jew who doesn't have a neshama yet until they convert. They can have a brilliant understanding of Kabbalah and Hasidus, and they can learn it all. But they can't feel it because feeling only comes from the neshama that you have, which is a part of Hashem. And this is the role of Moshe Rabbeinu. And he says, 4 lines in the end of the page. The pasuk says, "No God, das," and then Avdeo B'Leiv Shalom. And then you do it b'nefesh chfetza, with a desirable nefesh, because something you feel, you do much better. Everybody knows something we feel that we like and we feel that it's right, we do it much better than if we're just doing it to be yaitza, to fulfill our obligation. Therefore, Mashiach comes. And like the pasuk says, it's Deus Hashem, the whole world, because of the Gilui of the revelation of Mashiach, will have das. So then it says, Lo Yilamdu Ishas Re'eyu. No person's going to have to teach his friend Du'u'es Hashem to know God, the pasuk says. Ki kulam yedu eisi. Everybody's going to know that. Now we need Moshe Rabbeinu. The purpose of Moshe Rabbeinu is to feed the shepherd, right? Feed Jews with das, that they should actually feel godliness. Lost of love it when the world would be permeated with this das because of the revelation of Mashiach. We're not going to need it. Ach ikar das, but he says like this: what is the primary das? And Dr. Rebbe is defining now what the word das actually means. It says, Eina yediyah levada. It's not just the knowing alone. Sheyedu, that people should know Gedulas Hashem, the greatness of Hashem, mipi svarim or mipi sofrim, from authors and books. Okay, that's not what das really is. What is das? Elo ikar, the primary level of das, is lahamig daite, to delve his mind, immerse his mind, bury his mind in it. The gedulas Hashem, and the greatness of Hashem. V'litkaya machshavte, and to fix one's thoughts, to cause, like you pitch a tent, you nail it down, you engrave it. The chezik, with power. The emetz 11, the strength of the heart, v'amayach, of the mind. That is mind should be mekusheres Hashem, Bashem, connected to Hashem, bekesher amitz v'chazik, with a very strong bond. In other words, not a superficial bond. What Dr. Rebbe is saying now, what is the level of das, which is the functioning of Moshe Rabbeinu to instill within all of us das? Das means that I delve my mind into it, that I become one with it. He's going to soon quote the pasuk, what he quoted in Parag Gimel. The pasuk said, "Adam yoda es chava." Simply means Adam knew Chava. That's not what it means. It means they were intimate and they gave birth. So what does das mean? Das means becoming one. Many people can learn something, but they're not one with it. Das means you become one. Das binding, you become one with the subject matter. And we said many times, it says in Sfarim, a guy could learn 18 hours a day. Mamish learn. But then he closes the book and he goes home. He walks in the street. What falls into their head at that time? If what's going on in the street is what's occupying their head, granted they learned 18 hours a day, but they didn't become one with it. Like we learned many times, what's the difference between a worker and the owner of the business? A worker, even if he's a good, diligent worker, an honest worker, he works 9 to 5, okay? Before 9 o'clock, his mind is not in the business, and it doesn't have to be. And after 5 o'clock or whatever, his mind's not in the business. Doesn't have to be. He's a great worker from 9 to 5. But him and the business are not one. The owner of the business, as we all know, eats business, sleeps business, dreams business. Wherever they are, they're one with the business because it's theirs. It's one with them. Das means Alter Rebbe is explaining over here, not only understanding, but binding yourself that you mamish become one thing. And like he says, just like when you see something nice in a physical world, and you delve your mind into it, you want to make something, you want to build a house, you want to buy something, whatever it may be. You delve your mind deeply. Kanei the shadas uloshin his kashrus. Das means binding, like it says Adam Yoda. Okay, like it says Adam Yoda. And now the Alter Rebbe is going to explain that in reality, every Jew has that potential. But Moshe Rabbeinu needs to reveal it from the potential. And that's why it's important, as Alter Rebbe explains in the second chapter of Tanya before, why it's so important to have a connection to Talmidei Chacham, to Rebbes. Because the sustenance you get from the Rebbe anyway. But the question is, do you get it in an open way, face to face? That's when you're connected. Or do you get it, so to speak, over the shoulder because you're disconnected? But the one that actually feeds that level into the Jew, it's there. But who reveals that level of Moshe Rabbeinu within the Jew? The Moshe Rabbeinu in every generation. And that's what he's going to explain now, but we're going to stop here. That in order to reveal this level of Moshe Rabbeinu that we all have, takes a lot of work, body and soul. And the help of it comes from Moshe Rabbeinu. And as we'll discuss more in Mitzvah Shem next week, that in Chabad, a Rebbe will not do it for you. The Rebbe will give you, feed you, lead you, guide you. But bottom line is, you got to do it yourself. By the other Chassidim, the Rebbes would do it for the Chassidim. But the Chabad, the Rabbeim said, no, that doesn't work with that. Okay, anyway, everybody have a great weekend, a great Shabbos. Mitzvah Shem. We'll see you Monday night at 8:30.